All right, well, welcome to the compliance briefing for BAA requirements for steel fabrication. And first of all, happy Halloween to everybody. That's for all the ghosts and goblins out there. And with us we have Nick from St. Louis. He's out in the St. Louis area. Say, hey, Nick.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Awesome. Appreciate you being here. I'm Dave Lowe. I'm your host, the briefing host for today. This is actually our second briefing that we did on BAA compliance. It's awesome. A lot of interest in this particular topic. Want to welcome the folks that are here today. I've seen a lot of folks from state, VA are here, FEMA. I saw folks there, and some of my friends from National Community Service. I'd love to talk about what you see and what we can do for you there. That's an interesting move. I've known folks there for many years. A quick disclaimer, this event is not affiliated or endorsed by any agency and is provided to you, the audience, for informational purposes only. All participation in this briefing is voluntary, and any engagement by you, government personnel, is not an indication or endorsement of a commitment to purchase from any vendor, including Southwest Steel. We do that so that we can talk about the projects and anything else that you want to talk about. Keep it at a round table and get feedback. That's the main thing. If you have any questions, you can open up that panel on the right and you can fill them in the questions panel. You can also raise your hand and let us know you would like to talk with us. And in order to do that, if you called in on the phone, you have to enter your audio pin so that we can unmute you. If you did it on the computer, we can just use the computer microphone. You can also give us and anytime you can send us an email at govsupport at swsteelfab.com. So that's the best way to get in touch with us if you need to. And if you like the way that we look and you want to make us bigger, you can drag that little bar and you can make us as large as you want, or you can make us disappear altogether. So with that, today's agenda, we're going to be talking about initiatives and regulations surrounding BAA primarily, but we'll talk about whatever you'd like to talk about if you have any particular questions. Infrastructure programs are still coming down the pipe, we expect. Those are types of things that we've heard from the administration are very important. We also have agencies that have expressed a challenge in being able to meet the BAA requirements. We'll talk about steel fabrication in particular and best practices for fabrication so that you can make a good decision on who you choose for your fabrication project. So we'll get to some questions from you and talk about protecting your agency. So before we get going, we'll also be asking a couple of questions. You are here because why? I want to learn more about BAA compliance. I expect projects that will require BAA steel. I have a project with a steel requirement, or you're interested in hearing more about steel fabrication best practices. That's also part of this. And I know Southwest Steel Fabrication does great work. That's another reason why you might be here. So let us know why you are here, and we will make sure that we get you the information that you need. Let's see. It's 1/3 across the board. We have 1/3 that are asking about BAA and BAA Steel, and then we have a project that requires BAA Steel. Awesome. Great. Thanks for being here. We appreciate all your feedback. And so Nick is here. So tell us, Nick, tell us about Southwest Steel Fabricators. We know that you're in Kansas City, Missouri. So tell us about how you got started and what you guys specialize in.
Yeah, thank you. Southwest Steel, we've been around for a long time, since 1910, as you can see. We're a very broad and generalized steel fabricator. And by that, I mean we can handle pretty much any project under the sun. I would say the one exception being the very large steel girders on the largest of bridges. We do civil work. We do work for state departments of transportation. We do work for just your neighborhood general contractor. But these days, one of our core areas that we've been focusing on is more work with the government, just because of a few unique characteristics we have, such as being able to meet deadlines or quality, et cetera, that we'll share more with you on later on in this presentation.
Yep, and a lot of that revolves around theory of constraints. And if you haven't heard about that, that is a manufacturing process that helps reduce the costs as well as get you things done on time and right in the way that they're supposed to. Now, and it'll be great to be able to talk about that. I love that particular conversation. As Nick knows, um, let's talk about some of the federal projects. You've done a lot of work in the federal government, either directly or indirectly through Prime. So tell us about some of the ones you'd like to highlight today.
Oh, I mean, we've done projects all across the country. A wide variety of different end uses. As of late, I would say more of the projects that we've been focusing on are for locks and dams on the nation's waterways. We always hear about bridges for automobile traffic being in disrepair and whatnot, but I don't think they even hold a candle to some of the conditions that some of the waterways, the locks and dams on the waterways are in. So that is really an area that we see as being important to really important to the nation's infrastructure over time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's a specialty that you've been in for quite some time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, getting to the meat of what we're talking about with Buy American or the BAA compliance. This is actually an act that was passed in 1933, and it deals with manufacturing assembly in the United States. And we also have the new initiatives of more of Employ American as well. So we'll talk about that. There's efficiency mandates and things like that, but there's also aggressive use of BAA for steel. And that's one of the primary reasons why we're talking about it today. And just a real quick overview of the BAA is it's designed to drive anything that's of components mined or produced or manufactured in the United States, that 50% of that cost has to be handled or been produced here in the United States. So end products and materials that don't qualify are generally treated as foreign. Now, TAA, and we'll talk about TAA in just a minute, is a separate waiver, if you will, of the Buy American Act. So, but in January of this year, the president, almost as soon as he got in office, talked about construction of American pipelines, and it gave a 25% price protection over TAA products. This was brand new, and it started to look at how the new administration was viewing the waiver system. And we'll talk a little bit about waivers in just a minute. So with this, we have a clear requirement for American iron, steel, and products that Southwest Steel provides. So this goes from the initial melting stage all the way through the coating. So throughout the whole entire process, and it is immediately enforced on current projects and future projects. So there's a lot of things that happened where it was already awarded, and they had to go back and change the manufacturer or the place of manufacture for their steel. So the objective, again, is to minimize the use of waivers. There was a report that went to all the different agencies, and this is huge. And it's actually part of another slide that I'll show you. And that is, all the agency heads were tasked with taking a look at how they were handling American-made products and the waivers for those products. And it was to assess the compliance with the BAA laws and to develop the new policies and proposed policies to maximize the use of materials produced here in the United States. And it's a direct report to OMB. So these are brand new issues. So here's the question. Have you ever seen BAA contract language in any of the contracts that you have worked on? Excuse me. And we'll let you answer that question. And most of you probably have. And if not, it's probably embedded in some of the boilerplate information that you have for the contracts. And here's the results. Most people have seen it. There's few that haven't. So that's great. We'll make sure that we get you exactly what you need based on what your answers are. So let's talk about some of the BAA and TAA in contracts. So the TAA, the Trade Agreement Act, right, gave the president the authority to waive the requirements for BAA. Now, this is for certain requirements, and that it's delegated to the direct report of the U.S. Trade Representative to the President of the United States. So this is what's happened. USTR has waived the BAA for eligible products, and that's for any of the agreements, which include 39 countries, NAFTA, as well as the Israeli trade agreement. But all of these kind of got bundled into one, have been waived traditionally. That is not happening, as we see that at least it's changing now, where we see that a specific non-waiver, if you will, was addressed with steel, and it has wider implications across the purchasing of steel, especially, but other American-made products or any products. So I just talked with the White House the other day. This is what to expect. It's already written into what they were asking for, but it's the judicious use of waivers to ensure maximum utilization of goods, products, and materials that are produced in the United States. And we're going to see this starting to unfold with additional executive orders, as well as the proposals from the department heads on these, especially as it deals with steel. So what is your issue with dealing with BAA compliant steel? How is it verifying that it is really U.S. made steel? Is it the cost? Is it the quality, deliverability of it? Or is it something else that you'd like to talk about? And we can even unmute you if you have something else you'd like to talk about. Most folks are dealing with trying to figure out where it is, whether it's actually manufactured here. Let's see if there's anybody that has any other questions. Right now, everybody is saying that whether it's verified in the United States or not, whether they can verify it. So that's awesome. We want to address that for sure. Nick is making sure that we do. Thank you very much. And it is 100%. Everybody is looking for the ability to verify that is U.S. made steel. So, of all of those, we'll talk about every one of those. Before we even get into the cost and quality and delivery, let's talk about how you verify that your steel is actually coming from somebody that is a steel manufacturer here in the United States.
So, typically, anytime we purchase steel, we'll ensure that the steel is from a domestic source. So even though we don't always have the requirement that it be domestic steel, any steel that's in our shop is going to be domestic unless it's a real bizarre shape or size or whatever. So from our internal perspective, that gives us some comfort. But additionally, we'll be able to verify that it's domestic steel with certifications from our suppliers. Additionally, that what will give buyers comfort as well is that we'll be able. We've in numerous occasions signed something to attest that any steel that they buy from us is domestic, is certified to be compliant with BAA. So the good part about that is that the liability shifts from the buyer to Southwest Steel.
Mm. And is that what's required? Is that you're attesting that all the suppliers down through the supply chain, you know where they came from and how you got it? Because you don't do the smelting there, right? You're a fabricator.
That's correct. And so our certifications would be, we're buying steel that was, fabricated in the U.S. or not fabricated, but was melted in the U.S. or has the proper designation of being, quote unquote, domestic steel. Mm-hmm. And so, again, we're able to certify that. We'll get those certifications from our suppliers as well. So if there is any issue that's raised, the onus is on either Southwest or our suppliers to prove that it is domestic steel, and we'll happily accept that responsibility.
Awesome. And so we'll talk about some very specific pieces of best practices, because it's one thing to make sure that your steel is coming from the right place. It's another thing to make sure that your steel is doing what you're asking it to do and that you're getting the projects done. One of the key things that I've always experienced in any construction project is the ability to maintain that schedule. And that also is maintaining costs and cost overruns, change orders. Everything that anybody in contracting hates is having to do the change orders and manage those. So Your expertise, Nick, in dealing with fabrication costs, verifying the quality, and minimizing delays. That's what we're going to talk about next. So let's talk about fabrication cost management. And we mentioned this earlier with theory of constraints. TAC is what is the acronym for that, as if you need another acronym in the government, but that's what it is, theory of constraints. So tell us about theory of constraints and how it applies to you and how this works its way through your system.
Sure. So theory of constraints is, one of many different manufacturing philosophies, albeit one of the more popular and more successful methodologies, if you will. At the end of the day, why theory of constraints is important, especially as it relates to Southwest, is that Southwest takes a different viewpoint in that we view ourselves as a manufacturing firm that we're making widgets just like any other manufacturer. The unique aspect is that whenever I talk to our competitors, they never think of themselves as manufacturers. They think of themselves as job shops and whatnot, that their process really can't be improved. So the real distinction here is not necessarily that it's theory of constraints versus some of the others. It's just the viewpoint that Southwest takes, in that we know we're a manufacturer, we know we can improve our processes and procedures over time, and we make a concerted effort to do so. Theory of constraints is one of the methodologies that we use, but the fact that we're taking that time to try and improve that is perhaps more importantly. Additionally, theory of constraints works very well with lean manufacturing. Theory of constraints, I would say the focus is on eliminating or reducing the impact of bottlenecks. Lean manufacturing is really about reducing waste, and they sound similar, and they really are, but they have different toolkits that you can use that whenever you put them together, it really helps create a very effective manufacturing system.
And I remember when we talked in the past, you talked about empowering people in your organization and having that flat organization. What does that mean to have a flat organization? How does that apply to effectively implementing lean manufacturing and theory of constraints? How does that apply?
Really, it just reduces the possibility for miscommunication, and it reduces the time it takes for projects to go from the date that we win the project to when they actually hit the shop floor and fabrication starts on them. So if we're working on a project, you're talking to our chief estimator, a guy named Kevin, and he's going to be your chief point of contact throughout the entire project. And I mean, that's very unique to only be able to have one point of contact that can essentially answer all of your questions. So I think that's helpful from the buyer's perspective, but also it's helpful from our perspective because he has his pulse on literally every project that goes through the shop. Now, there will be some areas where he'll have to go and get answers and whatnot, but it's not going to be the situation where Kevin's got to talk to 3 different layers of management before he gets an answer.
And that has been traditionally the way things operate. And and this happens to be one of the pictures of the dams that you guys worked on, delivering the right product, the right quantity at the right time. And why would that be so difficult? Anybody who's done any fabrication or had fabrication projects done, we've seen this where it's the wrong quantity and it's the wrong product. How is it that you guys can process these and be able to get to where you want to go? Is it everybody, like you said, you're making widgets. Everybody has essentially the same equipment, right? And some of them are even like the latest and greatest pieces of equipment.
So it really just comes down to the fact that the processes and procedures are more important than the equipment in most cases. So I mean, you can have a piece of equipment that is state of the art, cutting edge, but if you don't have the right people, processes, and procedures to effectively operate that equipment, then you're really not in a better position. When it comes to delivering the right product, the right quantity at the right time, really comes down to being able to deliver steel that is able to be assembled effectively in the field. And another way that we're able to do that is by the employees that actually care about the product that is going out the door. Yep. If the employees care, then they're going to notice that the weld on part 1, 2, 3 isn't quite as good as it needs to be, and maybe needs to be reworked a little bit. The point though is that the rework happens in our shop, not out in the field, so that our customers get the right product the first time, every time.
That is. And what happens when, well, we'll talk about that in a minute, because I love what happens if not. Flexibility and efficient processes. Tell us about that. And what does it mean to have a redundant manufacturing cell? How does that operate?
So really, all that means, what it means to have a redundant manufacturing cell is that we've got multiple areas in the plant that can perform the same function. So if we have very large projects, we can dedicate different cells that are doing the same thing to that project, so that we're able to get the project out much quicker. Mm-hmm. The alternative to that is having a more sequential type setup, where product goes from station A to station B to station C, and it takes the total of those manufacturing times before it's complete. We've got several stations of A, several stations of B, several stations of C to get through more product more quickly. Additionally, our workforce is cross-trained, so that if the folks in station A don't have as much work, or we just, or it's a very important project that is moving on to the next process, we move all those guys to the next process, so that we have that many more hands on deck to, again, decrease the amount of time that it takes for the product to move through the shop.
Absolutely. And you mentioned it before, the flat organization feeds right into that, the cross-trained workforce.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
no, I mean, absolutely. And even more so, I mean, the flat organization, plays into minimizing delays and the cost management and whatnot. But really, it's almost better to think about, the three topics we talked about previously, lead times, or minimizing costs, lead times, and minimizing delays, as really as one interrelated topic. And what that really means is that we're able to help our customers be more successful on their projects, because one, we're giving them a good price, two, we're getting it to them more quickly than they might be able to achieve from some of our competitors, and finally, the high quality, it allows them allows the erector or the installer to get it installed the first time without any rework in the field. So again, it's a low price to start with. It's a schedule that helps them, and finally, it's the steel and the field that goes together well, so that their delivery schedules and their construction timeline, we're able to take a week out as opposed to adding a week.
Exactly. And so often, it's when you have complicated, some of the parts that you're making are complicated parts that get assembled in the field, so they have to be right, or you're going to have to rework, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes I will say that the folks that are erecting or installing our work, finding chances to back charge us is a key revenue producer for them. And so that's bad for us, because we get back charges, but it's also bad for the project, because they're going to milk that for all it's worth, and that can lead to delays. It's very important for us not to get those back charges, so that helps us continue to deliver a low-cost product, but it also helps the customer, in that they're not going to face delays in the field because something we did was messed up.
Yep. And the finger pointing and all the rest of the things that
absolutely.
Yeah, happens all the time. Happens all the time. Very good. So Here's a question that helps out. And when do you expect to have a steel fabrication requirement? Like right now? Is it near future in the second quarter of 2018? Is it sometime later in 2018? Or is it once infrastructure projects are funded? And I think you may be able to pick as many as you like. So you can let us know what you have, and when you need what we have. So we'll make sure we get the information out to you based on what you're asking. Let's see what everybody says here. There's some that are right away, some in the near future, and all the way across the board, looks like. Most folks know when they have something coming. That's a good thing. So we'll make sure that you get what you need for this. All right, we'll open it up to questions. If you have any questions, you can open up that panel. As I mentioned before, you can raise your hand. You can type them in, and I will ask some questions based on what you're asking. You're a fabricator. Sorry about the glasses, guys. I'm getting old. I turned 53 yesterday, by the way. So there you have it. You're a fabricator. How can you verify your steel is American made? And I think you described that earlier, but just recap that real quick. Did you actually do an assurance? What is your assurance and attestation? Is that what it is?
Sure. Well, I mean, really, we would be flexible with with our buyer. So, I mean, we would get material certs from our supplier stipulating that the steel is American, but we would go even one step further if it would help our customer, and just type up a form attesting that this steel is the steel is domestic, it is compliant with BAA, and any issues that would result from it fall back on us as opposed to the buyer. So we've not had to do that before, but we have that much confidence that what we do would be BAA compliant, that we just have no issues doing so.
Yeah, and you mentioned it before that everything that's in your warehouse, unless it's something really crazy, is manufactured here, and you can track it all the way down.
Yep.
Where are you? How many offices do you have, and where do you supply around? So the question is, how many offices, and what's your size as far as your geographic?
So right now we just have the one manufacturing plant in the Kansas City, Missouri metro area, actually located on the Kansas side. But so that's our only manufacturing plant currently. But we ship all over the U.S. literally from California to the East Coast. We do a lot of work in the Midwest just because we know more folks in the area, having lived in the area and worked in the area for a long time. But again, we ship nationwide.
Awesome. Do you provide structural steel?
Yes. Structural, miscellaneous, pretty much everything under the sun.
Very good. All right. Well, that's it for the questions for the moment. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand or you can shoot them over. You can also email them to us on the email at the bottom of the slide. That you can certainly do that as well. So why push for BAA Steel, and why is there a push for it? Well, it meets the new and upcoming federal mandates. What we mean by that is this is constantly changing. There's new initiatives that are happening as we speak because of the information that's coming from the agency heads and the places where this needs to be done. The president was clear originally about steel, especially. There's other components as well that where BAA is being driven, but it meets the guiding principles, and it's easier to verify the quality standards. This is one of the things that's really interesting to me, is because of where you are. You're kind of centrally located in the United States, first of all, but you have the ability to go visit your site and say, hey, is this really meeting the quality standards, as opposed to being somewhere out of the country. So that is one of the other reasons why we see some of these the requirements coming down for BAA, but you have the ability to go check them out and see what Nick has to offer. It's a better chance of minimizing delays, certainly. If you're looking at theory of constraints, if you're looking at lean manufacturing, the way that Nick has put it out, it really does make a big difference, and you don't realize it until you actually are using it to be able to take a week away as opposed to add to one, which was what you mentioned. And employing American workers, because all the folks that are working on in your plant are American workers, right?
Oh yeah.
Yep, American workers. So staying out of hot water. Make sure that everything that you do is BAA and TAA compliant, and you can drive this through your general contractors, through your primes, to make sure that all those are driven all the way down for conformance, all the way down through the supply chain, and verify those vendor claims and choose the quality vendors first. Make sure you're looking at those, and if you're making sure that you verify your lead times before you even engage somebody. So tell us about that, how you manage your lead times. If somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, I need this," how do you go about managing that lead time and guaranteeing that they're going to get that on time?
Well, there's really a lot of different scenarios how that might come up, but typically what we see happening is that at the beginning, at the very early stages of a project, the customer might request, maybe let's just say for the sake of argument, a 24-week lead time. So the beginning of the project, there haven't been any delays. They've got all the time they need to complete the project. They're going to give the steel fabricator 24 weeks to get the project. Well, as you and I both know, that doesn't always shake out as they plan. And all of a sudden, the customer says, well, we originally thought you'd have 24 weeks, but can you get this to us in 16 weeks? And that's a key not buying signal, but we listen for that language quite often, because a lot of times what we can say in those circumstances is, yeah, we can get it to you in 16 weeks, but would it help if we got it to you in 8 weeks or 12 weeks? And oftentimes that is music to a buyer's ear, because that 24 weeks to 16 weeks, that means they've lost 8 weeks on the project. So if they can pick up 4 to 8 weeks because of we're able to get it to them that quickly, all of a sudden their project's maybe not back on track entirely, but it's certainly picked up a lot of lost ground.
Exactly. And what happens if you don't make it?
Oh, it's just it depends on the contract. Sometimes there are liquidated damages assessed that we would have to pay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the worst case scenario from our perspective. But really, so many of our projects have that we know we just have to hit the deadline. So we don't stay in business by agreeing to a deadline and then getting past it and hope we don't get hit with damages. We stay in business by agreeing to a delivery schedule and beating it. Worst case scenario, getting it there just in time.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's the reputation, and that's why you're here, is because of what you've done and the best practices of being able to turn those delivery times around. And that past performance is illustrated by all the agencies that you've worked for. And for folks that are doing contracts, establish and use BPAs. It gives you fast access to vendors and minimizes the turnaround from a contracting standpoint. We're talking about actually manufacturing standpoint, but it minimizes that for that, and it's great for fiscal year end spending, which we'll be up against before you know it again, because that's where we are. And as far as getting out and getting Southwest Steel fabricators, if you need information from them, they are BAA compliant, small business. There's a DUNS, a cage code. If you need to buy through GSA or any of the socioeconomics certifications, we can certainly make sure that happens as well through partners, because you're not on a GSA schedule at the moment, but you can sell through any of the GSA schedule holders, right, Nick?
Absolutely.
Yep. Do a lot of work with the folks that already have those. Many construction projects aren't run through the GSA schedules anyway, but if you need something, you absolutely can reach out to them. So what do you need help with? Do you need help with, hold on, I'll get it, I promise. A specific project for fabrication? Is it a BAA compliant project? Is it a BAA compliant question? Or is it a federal contract question or something else? Please contact me. So let us know. what it is you need, and we'll make sure we reach out to you to get you what you need. What we have so far is a BAA compliant project, 100%. So that's good news. Because I think, Nick, you are BAA compliant last time I checked.
Still are.
And still are. So I'll give you another 5 seconds. Let us know what you need, and we'll make sure you get the information. And it stays 100%. And boom, there you go. I don't even have to show it. It's 100% on those. So follow up, you get a presentation you get a copy of the presentation with all that, the nice information about BAA compliance. We'll refresh the Q&A. If there's anything that comes in via email, we'll include that as well. Supporting documents, that's all the BAA things that we talked about as well. I'll give you links to all those, as well as Southwest Steel Fabricators capability statement, your procurement options, and any additional documentation you ask for. So other than that, what else besides wishing everybody a happy Halloween and go and getting some candy do we need to tell these folks, Nick McLean?
I think we're good here.
Yeah, absolutely. But we really appreciate you folks joining us. Thanks for the information. If you have anything else you'd like to reach out to Nick, his number's right there, as well as his email. And here's my information if you need to reach us. But certainly thank you for joining us. And we will see you at the next GovBrief for BAA compliance or whatever it is that you need. So thanks again. Have a great rest of the week. Thanks much.
Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.